Those two winners will advance to tomorrow. All matches are Armageddon. White will have 3 minutes, and both sides will bid for black. Low bid wins. The entire game from move 1 has a 2-second increment.
Boris Gelfand is making his bid here. He's going to play a very interesting set of games. This is the Armageddon, and as the arbiter Grant Owen just mentioned, this is to determine who will finish in top 10 of the Naroditsky Memorial Blitz. Now what happened is that 8 players, they finished with 8 points and above, and so they naturally made it to top 10. But for the last 2 spots, there were a bunch of players who finished on 7.5 points. They were Robson, Tang, Gelfand, Sindarov and Dominguez. Now 5 players and only 2 spots. And if you remember the World Blitz Championships 2024, Daniel Naroditsky was very close to making it to top 8 back then. He had finished 10th but was tied with the same points for the players who qualified for 8th spot and did not get a chance. And so the tournament organizers here have introduced the Naroditsky rule here, which means that all the players tied on the same score get a chance, and it will be Armageddon clashes. So you see there Andrew Tang making his bid. So the thing is, because it's Armageddon, it will have 2 seconds increment. The one who bids the lowest gets black pieces. So imagine that Gelfand has bid for 2 minutes 40 seconds and Tang has bid for 2 minutes 30 seconds. Then Gelfand gets white, Tang gets black. And here you can see Gelfand gets the white pieces. The arbiter is setting up the clock. I'm interested to see what is the time that Tang actually bid for. Unbelievably, he's bid for 1 minute 55 seconds. That's a lot of confidence, taking 2/3 of the time even with 2-second increment. I think very interesting as well, this strategy. Because there's 2 seconds increment and Tang is known for his speed, he's happy with this. So knight to f3, d5, g3, he goes bishop g2 and Boris castles. Bishop comes out to e7. And now pawn comes to c4, you have castles, b3 played, and Boris pushes his pawn to e3. It's a very classical setup. Bishop to b2, and you can see Andrew Tang justifying that, you know, this 2-second increment means that 155 can even be a lot of time. Knight to c6. Queen comes to e2, and now pushing d4 is a bit dangerous because of this diagonal. So Tang takes and plays bishop to b7. This is a very well-known setup. Boris brings his rook to d1. Queen comes to c7. The knight jumps into c3. And there are many different ways to play this position. Rook ac1 with the idea of d4 is one plan. He goes pawn to d4. Generally, these hanging pawns become weaknesses, but they are also, like you can see here, Tang actually attacking the c4 pawn. Now d5 is a possibility, but you are of course a bit worried about your c4 pawn hanging. And so for Boris, one idea is knight b1, but knight e5 makes a lot of sense. He defends here, the bishops get traded, and now a very good move is bishop to d6, threatening to take here, and then the c4 pawn becomes even more weak. I think Andrew is considering his options. Knight d7 is another idea to get rid of this knight, but after take there could be d5. That's always the plan. Rook ac8 played, increasing the pressure here. I think for Boris, d5 should feature somewhere. If he's not playing d5 and if he's playing passively with knight b1, then black seems to have the initiative with check to b7, pawn push to b5. Boris goes knight e4, and this is not particularly a great idea because queen b7 pins the knight. And more the trades, the better it is for black. Okay, Andrew Tang now thinking for his move. He has 1 minute 10 seconds. Boris has 2 minutes 19 seconds. Everyone knows Tang as the bullet expert. He is maybe the fastest bullet player on the planet. Queen b7. Even Nihal agreed to it. f3 played. And now pawn to b5. Not a good idea. The best idea was to first take on e4 and then continue with whatever b5 you wanted to do, because b5, now the knight is alive and Boris gets a chance to move his knight to g5. f7 is soft, e6 is soft. That becomes huge for white now. Will Boris manage to see this move knight g5? Sometimes you miss it because you're thinking about c5, d6, all these squares. You want to push the pawn forward, but you're also calculating tactics. Knight takes f7, king takes f7, knight g5 check, e6 is hanging. That could be something that Boris is looking at, but he must be careful about his time. Although, because he had extra time, he finds the move. Knight g5. Look at Boris Gelfand. There's so much determination on his face. He wants to beat Tang. He wants to be there in the top 10. That's what Boris is all about. Now, rook f8. Defend the pawn. That seems logical. But it's passive, you know. Even rook f8. I can take on f7 and move in with queen e6. And if you have to play rook f8, you are looking really, really passive here. cb. My rook can enter in. There's d5, d6 coming. So I don't know if Andrew Tang would like to play this. He goes rook e8. He plays his rook to e8, and his point is if you take on f7, he wants to take on c4. Wow, what defense. And c5, the best move played by Boris. He's not tempted by actually taking this pawn. He says, this is mine. I will take it when I have to. But for now, I want to save my pawn here on c5. Now knight c4 takes on f7. Extra pawn. Knight e5, I just come back with my knight. Knight b2, I just take with the queen. Maybe knight d5 with the idea of coming here. No, it takes on b2, but now Boris takes back with the queen. Queen takes b2, knight d5, threatening a check on e3. Okay, you may want to play rook e1 to just defend against that threat. That seems logical. Queen e2 makes also a lot of sense. He plays queen e2, queen c7. Time to bring this knight back into the game with h4 maybe. He plays h4 and b4. Look at the speed at which Tang is moving. He was threatening now a fork. Queen takes a6. Boris goes in. Knight e3 check. Did he miss that fork? Maybe or maybe not. I'm not sure. He goes king g1. His position still amazing because knight takes d1. e6 is hanging. He goes bishop f8, defending the pawn. And now rook e1, attacking the knight. Knight goes back to f5. King g2 coming up. Knight d4, winning this pawn. But now queen d3. Boris down to 42 seconds. Knight f5. Tang down to 8 seconds. c6, beautiful move. He goes rook 8, rook c2, defends and moves his queen up. Black is fighting. Black is fighting here, not giving up. Boris, well, at this age, not easy to keep your nerves. Rook d2 played. Rook to a8. He goes queen c4, attacking e6. Knight jumps into e3, but that's a blunder. He gives up the e6 pawn. And Andrew Tang's king is toasted here. He doesn't have time. King at 7 with last second. Gives a check. King goes back. Boom, takes. Knight f7. And it's almost a checkmate there. Boris Gelfand wins. Applause in the crowd. He's managed to knock out Andrew Tang. And look at that face of Boris. He's like, yes, that's good chess there. And he's the most happy when he plays good chess. But this was not his last opponent to face. He next is up against Ray Robson. A tougher challenge, I must say. Ray is a very strong player. And now if Boris wins this, he makes it to the top 10. But what a tough opponent, and this time Ray Robson is careful in his bidding. He bids 2 minutes 35 seconds, so only 25 seconds lesser. Boris must win. Draw is not enough. Knight f3. Boris goes for his trusted Reti system, which worked so well for him. Castles, g6 played here. Okay. What's Boris's plan? He goes d4, pawn takes pawn, knight takes, bishop g7, playing like the reversed Grunfeld here is Boris Gelfand. Knight to c6, he brings his knight to c3, and now e4. Simple chess. Castles, it's giving up a pawn. It's interesting. Knight d5, maybe a draw is enough for black, so Ray Robson has his prep there, that it's okay to give that up. Bishop g5, Boris trying to muddy the waters now. Knight d5 is a threat, even sometimes taking on f6 and d5 pawn could hang. h6 played, he comes back, bishop e3. Boris playing this confidently. He's looking at the dark squares with his bishop and knight. And Ray Robson, well, all that he needs is a draw here to advance. I would say he's the small favorite. Bishop f5. Attacking the c2 pawn with the idea of knight b4. Once again, taking here, taking here, taking here does not work. Knight b4 hitting, and look at this bishop. So Boris goes queen d2, attacking the pawn on h6. King h7 makes a lot of sense. But then I'll bring my another piece into the game, rook a d1. He goes knight to e4, not worrying about the h6 pawn. Boris just making sure that queen takes d5 is not the best move there. So pauses for a bit, otherwise taking on e4 is just very natural. And look at him swiveling a piece in his left hand. This is very, very famous thing of Boris Gelfand. He's able to swivel not just pawns or knights, but also queen, like huge pieces. Anyway, back to chess. Boris takes knight e4, pawn takes e4, and plays c3, limiting the bishop on g7 so that the b2 pawn isn't hanging. But the d3 square does become slightly weak, and so taking on d2 and then moving the rook could be an idea. But he takes, knight takes, and now Boris is attacking the pawn on e4. Okay, you just defend it. Rook fe8. He plays rook fe8, and now rook to d1 seems logical. He plays h3. He sees that there was some bishop g4 ideas to hit the rook. So first h3, also threatening g4 to win the pawn. So h5 makes sense. Ray plays g5 and makes square for his bishop to go back to g6. Rook a d1. Knight c4, knight d6 is very dangerous. So rook a d8 played, and now if you go knight c4, maybe he just drops his bishop back and plays f5 later. So that could be the reason that Boris won't go knight. Oh, he plays knight c4, bishop f8, slightly passive there, defending the d6 square. And now maybe g4. Yes, he plays it. Bishop must go back to g6. Okay, bishop e6 is also possible, because then the a2 pawn would be hanging, and I think that makes more sense. Yes, Ray Robson does it. Bishop e6, rook takes rook. Okay, you have to take with the rook. And knight d2, he comes back. Now attacking e4. Don't be tempted to take this, because maybe b3 traps this bishop. Although bishop c5 exists in that line. He takes on a2, but Boris doesn't even care about trapping it. He goes knight e4. He's looking at the f6 square. He then has rook a1 also. Wow. It's very interesting the way Boris is approaching these Armageddons. He plays bishop to e7. And now maybe knight g3. Ooh, f4. Wow, that's a bold decision. Does loosen the bishop a bit, but not a problem. He comes back, bishop c4, rook f2. And Boris wants to take advantage of these weaknesses in the black's camp. Also, this bishop is well placed. I think rook d3 is a nice move here, but he takes on f4, bishop f4, attacking the pawn on h6, king g7, defends it. Robson playing this well, showing his class. Maybe knight g3 to h5. Oh, but careful, careful. There's a pin, so king h2 first makes sense. Bishop e6, bringing the bishop back, and now knight g3. He goes bishop g5. Fantastic. 17 seconds for Robson, 1 minute 25 for Boris. I love how Boris has managed his time. He's played fast, and this is the time when he's starting to think a bit more. Takes on g5, hg, and plays knight e4. How do you defend the g pawn? Rook d5. Whoa, this is risky, but he's taking the risk. Do we want to go b4 and knight c5 as a plan? Robson down to 15 seconds. He plays b4. 1 minute for Boris Gelfand. These are the moments where your time going down puts you under big pressure. Rook e5, but what about knight c5 now? Attacking the b7 pawn and the e6 bishop. He goes knight d6. Okay, maybe knight d8. He goes rook e3, but now f7 is hanging, bishop f7, knight f5. Whoa, these tactics are difficult to contain. Boris Gelfand, rook f7, bishop f7. Oh, finds it. Wow. Robson shows so shocked, doesn't even take, but now gives a b7. c6 knight is hanging. He goes knight e5. But this is a mating attack now. Bishop e4 check. If king h6, mate. He plays king f6. Oh, he goes king h6, but then king f6, knight e8 mate, and gets checkmated. Boris Gelfand beats Robson, makes it to the top 10. Truly unbelievable how Boris Gelfand is, playing such impeccable blitz chess even at this age. Truly a legend of our sport, and truly an amazing 2 games against these 2 American youngsters.